Before we go into our interview today, I wanted to let everyone know we have a new sponsor for our Energy Question podcast, the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, or USOGA for short. First established in 1917, USOGA has been an effective and creative voice for the industry for more than a century now. USOGA is dedicated to educating the public, policymakers, and legislators at the federal, state, and local levels about the value of the domestic oil and natural gas industry. If you're in the industry and not currently a USOGA member, please consider joining the association as a way of helping it tell your story to the policymakers whose actions impact everything you do each and every day. You can start that process by contacting USOGA through its website, usoga.org. Thanks so much to USOGA for sponsoring the Energy Question podcast. And now on with our show.
Hi, welcome to the Energy Question with David Blackmon. I'm your host, David Blackmon, and our guest today, our special guest, is Dave Callahan, president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition. Dave's been with us before, and it's always great catching up with what's happening up there in the world's biggest natural gas reserve in Pennsylvania and Ohio, West Virginia. And Dave, how are you doing today?
Doing great, David. It's great to be with you here today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your time. It's always fun catching up. Y'all do such great work up there for the industry and the people in the region as well. I wanted to, before we get into the Q&A though, just take a couple of minutes to remind our viewers who the Marcellus Shale Coalition members are and what your mission is.
Certainly. The Marcellus Shale Coalition, I might revert to referring to it as the MSC. We're a statewide trade association here in Pennsylvania, representing all facets of the unconventional natural gas industry. So upstream, midstream, downstream, and a whole host of companies and that provide, goods and professional services to the industry. So we're talking about, those associate members, including everything from environmental firms, engineering firms, drilling companies, to construction trade unions. We've been blessed to have a number of construction trade unions join the organization, locking arms on advocacy efforts with, the many producers in the state and the midstream companies as well.
Well, that's one of the things people tend to forget about our industry, isn't it? That, it's an industry whose benefits for the community really have wide-ranging impacts in terms of not just economic impact, but also jobs, indirect job creation for all these the trades and, even real estate business,
you name
is impacted. Yeah, you name it. And it really is a tremendous benefit across the whole economy.
It truly is.
Yeah. Did I interrupt you?
No, I was just going to jump into something and say, we've done some research or had some research performed for us that shows that the industry supports 123,000 jobs here in Pennsylvania. That's a significant number of jobs. And again, everything from, you've heard me say it before, with folks with qualifications from a GED to a PhD. We give people, young people, career changers, an opportunity to stay in their own communities. And I don't know about where you are, but in Pennsylvania, that's a rarity. And that's something that hasn't been available to again, students and career changers for a generation or more. So those jobs are all across the spectrum. We've, the research that we've had conducted show that those jobs pay an average of about $97,000 a year. That's more than 100% higher than the state weekly wage. So wide-ranging impact. I like to say, not just family sustaining, community sustaining jobs as well.
And Pennsylvania, some of those jobs that even directly in the industry are union jobs, aren't they?
Some of them, some of them in some businesses, correct, but mainly on the contractor side, mainly on the folks who are building stuff and maintaining stuff on behalf of the industry. Primarily, in the midstream sector, but a bit up and downstream as well. So pipeliners, steam fitters, boiler makers, operating engineers. Those people are doing great work and provide a good service to the community all at the same time in providing training for these, again, young workers and career changers.
So what was the motivating factor? Why did y'all decide to conduct this study at this particular point in time? You know, we obviously it's probably always good a time as any to conduct this study, but what was the generation point for it?
Well, you know, we've spoken before, and, you know, we rely on facts, and we rely on solid facts that we can back up. So we wanted to truly show the economic impact of this industry. So it seemed like the timing was right. We initially discussed it with our board members, executive board members last year, kicked it off beginning of the year, and the numbers are absolutely astounding. I mean, you and I had some baseball talk before we got on. You know, we can show the industry has been a home run for Pennsylvania, perhaps a basis clearing home run at that. You know, $41 billion in economic activity in 2022 alone. That's significant. That's absolutely significant.
That's a lot.
A lot of work, and a lot of that, again, going to the jobs and labor side, a lot of that is in labor income as well. So a lot of impact here. We thought the time was right to talk about it and to share good, solid facts with our stakeholders, meaning folks like you and in government, in media, our stakeholders in the communities where we operate, and stakeholders in communities where we don't operate as well, where we want to show them that they're benefiting from this industry. Even though they might not be in the heart of the shale play, they're benefiting from it immensely.
Yeah, you know, that's always been something that has been a challenge for the industry, that story right there, to tell and make people really understand it. You know, people who live in the communities, and I grew up in a community in South Texas that was deeply impacted anytime there was a boom or a bust in the oil and gas business. You know, when there was a boom going on, restaurants, grocery stores, everybody was just raking in money. And then when the bust would hit, hard times would come about. And so when the industry like the Marcellus has been a sustained development cycle, like you've been in Pennsylvania really for, gosh, 17, 18 years now. It's really, people kind of forget, you know, I mean, you've obviously had some boom and bust during that period of time, but you're in this long sustained development cycle in Pennsylvania, and it's something that people kind of lose sight of over time, isn't it?
It is absolutely that. And to the point of trying to share the information with folks, you can't do much sharing unless you have the facts right first. And so we got the facts right. They're defensible. We spent good money on getting the survey completed. And your point about, you know, the longevity of the play, you know, we just saw a couple of weeks ago forecasts come out of the Potential Gas Committee showing that we've got upwards of perhaps even more than 100 years of supply in the United States, with Pennsylvania, the Appalachian region, and where you are, you know, leading the way. You know, the resource potential is there. The economic impacts are there. And, you know, it goes without saying that, you know, those economic benefits are equaled by the environmental benefits from using all this natural gas, the national security and energy security benefits as well. You know, we're making the environment, we're making this fuel source every single day leading up to those 100 years or more sustainable every single day.
That 100-year supply number is always interesting to me, because I don't know the details of the PGC study you're referencing, but typically those kinds of studies are based on proven reserves at current technology, right?
Yeah.
And so when you say we have a 100-year supply as a result of that study, considering just proved reserves at current technology, well, technology advances every day.
Absolutely.
And it's another thing that, you know, most people really don't understand is how technology based the industry really is, and how many different kinds of modern technology it deploys every day during any company's course of business.
Yeah, you know, and we've got some evidence of that, you know, some back of the envelope evidence, and that's from our annual conference. We just closed up our Shale Insight conference a couple weeks ago, And
Yeah.
you look at the exhibit floor, when the industry first started out, we did some back of the envelope calculations. When we had the exhibit floor back in the early days of the organization and of the industry, it was mainly, the blocking and tackling of the industry. It was the basics. It was maybe 20% focused on technology that might do something in the sustainability realm. If you look around the room and the area where we had folks exhibiting a couple of weeks ago, it's more between 40 and 50% of the exhibitors are showing things about, new technologies, new services, monitoring emissions, capturing emissions, you name it. That stuff is not just pie in the sky. It would be nice if we could. It's being applied every single day. And so to your point, to wrap around that 100 years, you're absolutely right. That's 100 years doing things the way we're doing it today. Like a lot of forecasts, that forecast is outdated, in a good way, within an hour or so of when the forecast is released, because the technology is advancing by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, it really is. And it's such an amazing time to, I'm not actually in the industry anymore, but I'm around it and I watch it. And the pace of technology advancement and adoption since I began my career in late 1979 in the oil and gas business has always accelerated throughout those 44 years. It never stops accelerating and expanding into new areas. And so it's just, and it's a microcosm of the whole economy, I guess, right?
Yeah. And so while some of that technology is focused on, hitting that pinpoint even more and more accurately at, laterals of 3, 4 and beyond 4 miles, there's still even more technology out there at having it done with electric drilling rigs, electric hydraulic fracturing, reducing pneumatic controllers, doing things day to day that make the industry ever so more sustainable. And that's just our end of it. That's not on the use end, because on the use end, there's even more advancements being made.
That's true. It's really going to help down the road cut into, not just scope 1 emissions, but scope 2 and even scope 3 emissions as the accounting for all of that becomes more sophisticated. And I think we're likely to have some requirements put into place by the SEC either later this year or early next year. So that's all very important in terms of being able to facilitate those requirements and comply with them. One of the things that just never ceases to baffle me about the Northeast, and we see a lot of reporting on it, and of course the basin, the Marcellus and Utica basins have been somewhat constrained in recent years on pipeline takeaway capacity, and that's largely because of New York State and some other factors not allowing pipelines to be built up to the Northeast. Are you looking to see any relief in that regard here soon? I hope.
We desperately need that relief because, first of all, you referenced this field, this region, the Appalachian Basin is one of the biggest in the world. Certainly it's the most productive in the United States. But we can only do so much here. We can only secure so many of these resources. We can only get so much of this out to the markets without more infrastructure. And quite frankly, the MVP pipeline is like the big example of how hard it is to get something done. It shouldn't take an act of Congress to approve a single pipeline. So we have hopes that perhaps something can be done at the federal level to reduce the amount of unnecessary litigation and challenges, but at the same time, upholding strong regulatory standards, durable regulatory standards that can withhold challenge as well, to ensure that pipe can be put in the ground, people can be put to work to put that pipe in the ground, and that product can be used both in domestic and international markets alike.
Well, so we also see a lot of reporting, although it's actually kind of gone away in the last couple of months. Senator Manchin was leading an effort to streamline federal permitting processes. in Congress, and they had a vote last year and it failed, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of momentum there. But really, when we look at what the holdup is, in terms of getting capacity built to the Northeast, it's really New York State, and but the federal government's also a holdup there too. But how do we explain? I guess what I'm always curious about, not living up there, is how do we explain the states of New England being willing to pay such exorbitant prices for their natural gas in their electric generation, and being willing to tolerate doing that, knowing that the state of New York is really serving as a blockade, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah.
For some economic relief there.
It's a couple of things. And again, New York is certainly, first and foremost on the list of states that have, held back construction, but New York didn't hold back the MVP project. New York didn't hold back the Penn East project that was going eastward from Pennsylvania into New Jersey. It's a combination of state and federal bottlenecks. And for our friends and neighbors up north in New England, I wish I knew, because they are in such a constrained state for not just natural gas, but for energy, for power.
Yeah.
Where, look, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has had, twice yearly conferences up there on resource availability, kind of wringing their hands over how are we going to get the power? How are we going to get the natural gas here? And so I think it was announced this year, one of the biggest power plants, if not the biggest power plants in the region, fueled by natural gas, is going to be shutting down up there. And adjacent to it is an LNG import facility that not only serves that plant, but serves natural gas customers, residentials, commercial and industrial customers as well. And the future of that facility is called into question. What's it going to take to get people to realize that we need product up there, and that product is clean, it's sustainable, it's reliable, it's domestic? We're in a. I don't know when you're going to air this. Maybe my baseball comment was out of touch, but the world is pretty turbulent right now, and the fact that we're energy secure and our national security benefits from it, I think we could take a look at world events and take heart in knowing that we're not in the situation that we were 25, 30, 40 years ago, when we were anything but energy secure and our national security suffered as a result.
And as you're talking about, the 100-year supply, the PGC study, and there's other studies we've conducted in recent years showing how abundant the resource really is. I would have thought, and I honestly expressed this view shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine last year, that this could serve as an example, a real world example to convince the Biden administration and other policymakers at the state level that you really need to kind of unleash America's energy. We had such new demand coming from Europe for LNG. I think of the possibility, the potential for the Marcellus Shale, if you had the LNG export infrastructure there and the pipelines to get the gas to those facilities. You think of the role we could be playing with that resource internationally, and it's such a lost opportunity, it seems to me.
It's not just an opportunity, a lost opportunity for us, but it's a dire need of those countries in Europe and some countries in Asia as well, to provide for their energy security. I mean, I just saw today that a pipeline in or near Finland has come under attack by some means, or it has been disrupted by some means. These countries need reliable power. They need reliable energy. They need a reliable partner. We fill all those roles, and we could do even more, again, if the infrastructure was in place to allow us to get that natural gas to market and to do it in a responsible manner. We've talked about this before. Their prior source of natural gas. I would put our regulations in Pennsylvania and Texas and Oklahoma, Ohio, and West Virginia up against what constitutes regulations and requirements in Russia any day of the week. And I know we'll come out on top by leaps and bounds. And I know the European countries would benefit as a result, as they're benefiting right now.
Well, all that's having been said, though, I always hate to be negative Nelly on these podcasts, but when we really step back and look, the industry itself is so nimble and has such a tremendous ability to adapt to difficult circumstances. How would you assess the overall health of the industry there in Pennsylvania, and the optimism looking out into the future that these companies express to you?
Certainly. Well, you can't ignore the facts that we've assembled about where we are economically and the benefits that have been realized on the environmental side of the ledger. But at the same time, there's no guarantee that that will continue. Capital flows to where the capital finds the least resistance, or is best suited, where the greatest return. If we are in fact, facing constraints as we are on the infrastructure side that limit continued growth here in this region, despite all the product that we have available here, perhaps the capital goes elsewhere to your part of the country or elsewhere until things can loosen up and do loosen up here. It's a shame to think of it that way. But we've heard from a number of executives at our conference. They see this basin as extremely valuable, but they certainly understand the constraints that we're working under. We've got to get the policies right, the federal level, the state level, and growing more and more every day, sometimes at the local level here, to ensure that we've got common sense policies in place that allow this industry to grow in a responsible manner, to get that pipe in the ground, to get the product where it's needed.
One of the numbers that really jumped out at me from back to the economic impact study, one of the numbers that really jumped out to me was the $6.3 billion in royalties to both private and government entities. That's a really big number, isn't it?
That is certainly a big number, and that goes back to the people who actually own the natural gas. That we don't we're there because they allow us to be there. We put a pipeline on a piece of property, generally, and thinking particularly about gathering lines here in this part of the country, because people allow us to be there. It's their product, and they benefit handsomely when conditions are right. And that's $6.3 billion. That's life-changing. It's community-changing. It's community, again, I'm going to use the word community-sustaining as well.
Yeah.
You see it, and I'm sure you've seen it in your travels as well. But you travel, to very, very rural areas of Pennsylvania, areas that I call home, and you see the benefits there. You see a few businesses popping up that wouldn't otherwise be there. You see the improvements to farms, to people's homes, the equipment around people's homes and farms as well. And you know that those people are great partners, great stakeholders with the industry, and they're reaping some of the benefits.
Another number that jumped out at me, and I have a question about it, because I don't know, I wasn't aware, first of all, that there are apparently pretty extensive federal lands in Pennsylvania, right? I mean, you have $2.6 billion in federal royalties is a very substantial number.
Well, that number is actually taxes, federal taxes. There's 2.6 in federal taxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 6.3 includes both public and private landowners, but we do have some federal lands here in the Allegheny National Forest, which has been the subject of great litigation. Now, the state itself has benefited from royalties. Our game commission, hunting and fishing is really, really popular, and we've got the right environment for it here in Pennsylvania. The game commission has benefited tremendously from partnering with the industry to develop resources under their land, and to the point where we calculated they could go several years without even charging a fee for hunting licenses if they so desired, and just living off the proceeds that they've received. Now, mind you, I don't think they're going to do that, but the numbers are sufficient.
Well, this is fantastic, man. It's always great hearing from you. I really appreciate your time. What's coming up next? What do you have coming down the road? Any meetings coming up, or
Sure,
what are you going to be focused on?
We just finished up our main conference for the year, where we had, roughly 750, 800 people under the roof, looking at hearing from company leaders, labor leaders, seeing the new technology. We quickly turned the page. We're having a training session, as we call it, a smaller mini conference on hydrogen and carbon capture. Again, looking at the technologies that are out there that are taking what we're doing now and changing it, evolving it. It's what we need to do. This private marketplace, you've witnessed it, I've witnessed it. The private marketplace is doing wonders with this industry and with the energy industry overall. Whether it's fuel cells on the end that you might have attached to your home that'll generate clean power, no emission power from natural gas, whether it's AI out in the field, manipulating gas flows, the operation of processing plants and so forth. So we're always looking at those things down the road, and we're putting events together for our members and others so they could learn more about it.
Where can people go to contact you and read about what's happening?
Sure. I'll go through a couple options. First of all, our website, marcelluscoalition.org. And we also have very active social media channels on X, now that I get it right, X, Facebook, LinkedIn, and folks can certainly look me up on LinkedIn as well. Drop me a note. Love to talk with people.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Dave. I'm having a real hard time getting used to the whole X thing.
I have to stop myself.
It's just I don't understand how they came up with that, but it's not my business.
It's like a football or not so much baseball. It's like a football team that moves. You have to catch yourself from saying Oakland. No, Las Vegas. Yes.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to be doing that with the athletics too, right? Pretty soon. So anyway, well, man, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Wish you the best of luck, and appreciate your leadership for the industry.
Likewise. Keep up the great work, David. Love reading your stuff.
Thank you. And thanks to our extraordinary producer, Eric Perel. Thanks to the Sandstone Group and Stu Turley for producing our podcast, and to our sponsors at the U.S. Oil and Gas Association. I'm David Blackmon, and that's all for now.